co-signatory to them. You have ICCPR and others. So why do you have polygamy as legal, but you don't have other homosexuality being legal?
I think it's a matter of who we are as a people and what is important to us. African traditions, societies generally have historically been polygamous. So even when the colonial government came with the Marriage Act and all that, which says one man, one wife, you still find out that a lot of people simply don't get married under the Marriage Act and marry under Islamic personal law or marry under the native law and custom, because it's allowed under our traditions and under Islamic law. And as a matter of fact, some people have actually married in churches or registries, marriage registries, and they still ended up, with multiple spouses, or they had multiple spouses before doing it. So it is what it is. It's part of our culture. Parents are complaining that the school literature, the school syllabus is being changed to reflect sexual orientation of children. So it's not unusual if you want to fill a form in the US or in the UK and they're asking you, is it he, she, they, and all sorts of
no specification.
Yeah, and some say they're non-binary and all, and parents are like, hey, let our children be children. Don't bring this into this.
Sorry, I had to even bother. I saw one where they said at some point they have to start teaching children how to masturbate, and then parents came out to say, oh,
yeah,
there's
some books that was discussing this. They said they were discussing sexual education of the children, and the parents were very, very upset that they were sexualizing children and all. So it's a movement. It's a societal shift. Okay, it depends on the side of the wall which you are, side of the fence. If you're on the pro side, they say, oh, we're letting children know their awareness. A man could be trapped in the body of a woman. A woman could be trapped in the body of a man. You have a right to express yourself. You have a right to discover yourself. They even do gender assignment it's available now from a very young age. And I read somewhere where the young boy wanted to become a girl, and then later on he said, oh, I'm tired of being a girl, I want to go back to being a boy. Yeah. The argument is that these are kids and they're not old enough to form an opinion and know who they really are. That's one side of the divide. And then you have the other side, especially from parents who feel, hey, don't discuss this with my children and all. So that there will definitely be clashes.
We'll begin this conversation taking our quote first from Ashram Palsi, who is an Iranian refugee, once said, living in Canada too. Every LGBTQ plus refugee has a unique situation, but the fear and pain they endured before coming to Canada is universal. Okay, so we'll take our next one, and this one is from Carl Heinrich, who is known as one of the first gays or gay men to publicly announce his sexual orientation. He once said, I am proud that I found the courage to deal the initial blow to the hydra of public contempt. My next quote is from Zanel Muholi, who is a South African activist and artist. She once said, if I wait for someone else to validate my existence, it will mean that I am shortchanging myself. Okay, my last one from James Baldwin, who is a gay author, once said, love him and let him love you. Do you think anything else under heaven really matters? Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Today, we will take our attention to homosexuality or the LGBTQ plus and same-sex marriage, especially in Nigeria. What does the Nigerian law say? Because I'm sure a lot of people must have seen that video of a gay wedding or marriage that happened in Delta State, and over 60 people were apprehended by the police. So most people have come out to say that the police have no right to arrest those people, while some other persons came out to say that if you're in Nigeria, why not behave like the Nigerians do? Like they say, if you're in Rome, behave like the Romans behave. So we'll be talking about that. But first, I've got my guest in the studio already. But first, I'll take you straight to a particular conversation I had earlier with BC Alimi, who is an LGBTQ plus advocate. We'll take part of that conversation and then we'll come back to the studio to have the conversation with Kola Alapinni, who is an international human rights lawyer, to see exactly what the Nigerian law says with regards to same-sex marriage, or when you have male and male together, or you have female and female together, or you have human and animals. That's what we see now. So we'll actually take the conversation to see what the law says. When you are in Nigeria, what should you do? And when you leave Nigeria, what should you do? My guest will tell us. I will see you after this conversation with BC Alimi. See you later.
Encourage everyone watching, everyone listening to this program, that HIV doesn't kill. It's a stigma, it's a shame. And the thing about this is, I have a mantra: you cannot shame the shameless. I celebrate the fact that I'm HIV positive. I take my medication, and that is why for 18 years I am as healthy as anyone can be. My appeal to you, if you're watching or listening to this program, is get tested. If you've been sexually active, if you don't know the HIV status of the person you've had sex with, or if you've had an unprotected sex, get tested.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll go straight to a conversation for today. And my guest is Kola Alapinni, international human rights lawyer. It's great to have you on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so now let's, before we started, we've actually seen an earlier video where I had with the LGBTQI plus A plus advocate, that's BC Alimi, and then he talked about their rights. But let's come back to Nigeria. Let's come back here. What exactly does the law say? Because we saw that video of over 60 gays arrested, and then you had people who came out to say they had no rights. I've even seen lawyers say that the police had no right to arrest them, and then other people's come out to say that they shouldn't have, if a law says no to you in a particular certain region, then you should be very careful what you do around there. So let's remind us first, back home in Nigeria, what does the law say with regards to same-sex marriage or even homosexuality and lesbianism, or as the case may be?
Okay, we have an act of parliament, the Same-Sex Prohibition Act of 2013, which prohibits, it defines, husband and wife in a lawful marriage, who is entitled to the benefits of a lawful marriage. It prohibits same-sex marriages, prohibits homosexuality, etc. So that's basically the body of laws that that guides this in Nigeria. And I know it's very controversial, because when you compare it to international human rights law and probably our obligations under international law, where we're not supposed to discriminate against anybody. But you have to realize that Nigeria is a sovereign nation, and this is what the parliament is saying, that we prohibit same-sex relationships in Nigeria. It depends on the side of the coin which you stand on. Some advocates would say, oh, why is the international community breathing down heavily on us and telling us to do away with this? And they say, well, this is our country. After all, maybe they should legalize polygamy first before coming to speak with us. So I guess it's a matter of sovereignty.
So is polygamy, is it legalized?
In Nigeria?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And then you have some people say that if Nigeria is a co-signee to a lot of international human rights, we co-signatory to them, you have ICCPR and others. So why do you have polygamy as legal, but you don't have other homosexuality being legal?
I think it's a matter of who we are as a people and what is important to us. African traditions, societies generally, have historically been polygamous. So even when the colonial government came with the Marriage Act and all that, which says one man, one wife, you still find out that a lot of people simply don't get married under the Marriage Act and marry under Islamic personal law or marry under the native law and custom, because it's allowed under our traditions and under Islamic law. And as a matter of fact, some people have actually married in churches or registries, marriage registries, and they still ended up, with multiple spouses, or they had multiple spouses before doing it. So it is what it is. It's part of our culture.
Okay, so you've actually not touched on the initial question I asked with regards to those who say that the lawyers who say the police have no right to arrest the over 60 gays they found. I think it was in Delta State that we saw recent. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Well, if the police caught them in compromised situations.
Explain to us, what does compromised situation mean?
Well, it depends, Say, for instance, let me give you an example. In the anti-vice police, for instance, and if they go to some parts of Abuja and pick up girls who are soliciting by the street side, and they're able to prove that they're actually soliciting, maybe you have an undercover policeman who tries to engage the services of these ladies, and they're able to document it and have it on camera or wherever, then they will be able to prove that these people are indeed commercial sex workers, and they could charge them under the various anti-vice laws. I suppose that the police would have done their investigation before cracking down. I think they said it was a gay wedding or something else going on. That's a violation of the law which we have in Nigeria. We must distinguish between international human rights law and national law, domestic law. Nigeria has a law criminalizing it. If there was no act of parliament criminalizing same-sex marriages, then we could say they haven't committed any offense. International human rights law protects them. But there's a domestic law, an act of parliament, which guides our ways and behaviors in Nigeria. Then you could say maybe the police are able to operate under that law. However, their defense counsel, if I were defending them, I would proceed under the Constitution and try to test it and say, the Constitution says there should be no discrimination against. But all these are, they're legal gymnastics, so to speak, because it depends on how you marshal your arguments and you're able to convince the judge, because there's also a part of the Constitution that talks about public order, etc., and public policy, and
So definitely, that they would have their legal defense team. You have most of them that would definitely get lawyers. What kind of conversations or what kind of laws would they be meting out when they get to court?
The same-sex Prohibition Act will definitely be, you know, the law which they will be using to prosecute them, and the other party will be looking for loopholes to punch in the prosecution's case. That would include using the Constitution, as I said, and probably some international instruments which we have signed up to, if it applies in this case. Then, that's what I would exploit.
Okay, so is it going to be a win-win situation, or?
I don't give free legal advice on TV. Oh, but it certainly would be an interesting, if the matter does get to court, it would be interesting to see how both parties marshal their arguments.
So I actually saw somewhere on social media, someone sent a message and saying that, okay, I saw it somewhere, I think it was, I'm not going to mention the name of where I saw it, but then it says, coming from Massa Nick, says, my big auntie asked when I'm getting a husband, and I didn't know how to break it to her that I am indeed seeking a wife. And then you are in Nigeria and you have this, and then the police catches up, sees this message and says, okay, look for that person and bring the person immediately. Do they have a right to?
Yes,
and then, because people keep saying after there's freedom of speech.
It goes beyond that. Okay, as I said, the police would there's a law in place, and anybody that contravenes that law will face the music, whether we like it or not. And that's why you see all this programs on TV where you have housemates who are put together in a particular house for a certain number of months or days, or you have all these other shows, similar shows, maybe like game shows or music shows. They sign a contract before they go in there after they're selected. And one of those provisions of that contract are what is contained in the act that prohibits same-sex. So you wouldn't find someone on the program where they have housemates who are going to be, in a fixed place for like 90 days, engaging in that on TV, because that the producers and the TV station will be liable to prosecution. Okay. But it goes beyond just the law. I think it's a sociological thing. It's a sociological movement that is gaining grounds around the world. Gay pride is celebrated widely. You saw it recently. So it's an intersection of societal values, sociological evolution in recent times, and the way the world is moving, or globalization. Okay. We would be lying to ourselves to say that homosexuality or queer sexual behavior did not exist even before colonial times. It did. It was just frowned upon, and it didn't have the wide notoriety or wide acknowledgement, depending on which side of the divide you are, which it has now. Okay. And now we're in the era of the use of new technologies. In an instant, information is disseminated. It's more widely accessible.
So that's the reason for the spread.
It is. You can't neglect it. What happens right here in Nigeria can be transmitted immediately to the US or the UK in seconds from your phone. And that's a game changer. Also, you would notice the people who live abroad, institutions which had the narrative of the story, a one-sided narrative, are now being challenged by a lot of people in Africa, especially in Nigeria, because Nigeria has about 40 or 50% of the youths. I can't remember the right demographics now. Maybe even 60% of our population is comprised of youths, and they have access to information technology. They have access to mobile phones and everything. So if you say anything on Twitter and you think you're safe in the US or the UK, rapidly, and a lot of them have been locking up their Twitter profiles because they're not used to they talk back, they push back from Nigerians, you know, who either probably didn't have access, they didn't have visas, their voices were muffled, and you can see what was happening with all these election things. You saw what happened with NSAS, even the owner of Twitter, Jack, had to, you know, show solidarity. So the use of new technology has given people an avenue or a voice to be part of a global change or global inclusion, whether you're from the global south and the north and anywhere you are. Once you have internet, so you can subscribe to it and you can have it on your phone. It doesn't even have to be a very sophisticated phone for you to get your voice to be heard. So this allows for the proliferation of and spread, dissemination of information. And you now understand why our government tries to muzzle this, you know, the power of the internet. I was going to
ask, are they clamping down on?
They will eventually, and they have. The last administration shut down Twitter, so, and that's why you have the Cybercrime Act and everything. The government will say, oh, we want to control fake news. We want to, you know, make sure that responsible news are being put out there, especially from people who are not trained journalists like you. Everybody is now a citizen journalist, but the danger in it is that they just record things and they can just skew it or edit it and send out false narratives. I was watching a video on WhatsApp where a lady was being depicted to be the Minister of Culture and Arts, and she was not, you know. I can imagine the minister saying that and she would just be upset and say, oh, but this is not me. Why are they spreading this all around? And those are the kind of stuff. Even with the emergence of artificial intelligence, you know, someone, you know, just puts a video of United States president or our current president and matches it with a voice that mimics his own and tries to say things that the president is not saying. So it's a real danger, and that is the intersection where governments try to control the narrative or at least regulate the space.
Because you mentioned NSAS, now that you've said quite a number of things that we're going to draw out from. Now, because you mentioned NSAS, I remember some of the placards that the youth were carrying had inscriptions such as Nagia Ibianoki person. And then a lot of people frowned at it. So what are your thoughts in that regard? And I hear you talk about when you go to get visa, and then someone came to me and said that if you're trying to get your visa, you're trying to if you find a job opening somewhere, or you're filling any applications, or you find the caveat there, male, female, or at some point they might even ask you, you don't even need, no option, or you don't want to mention. So why do you think that all of this, why has it gotten to that extent? And then again, when even in Nigeria, they'll tell you have to be very careful, especially when if you're going into an election, and if you clamp down on people's sexual orientation, they'll, like the internet never forgets, they'll come back and wait for you some other time.
Yes, as I told you earlier, it's a societal shift. Even in advanced countries, the West, so to speak, they are having challenges. The United States, for instance, there's been parents are complaining that the school literature, the school syllabus is being changed to reflect sexual orientation of children. So it's not unusual if you want to fill a form in the US or in the UK, and they're asking you, is it he, she, they, and you know, all sorts of
no specification.
Yeah, and some say they're non-binary and all. And parents are like, hey, let our children be children. Don't bring this into this.
Sorry, I had to even burden. I saw one where they said at some point they have to start teaching children how to masturbate, and then parents came out to say, oh,
yeah, there's some books that was discussing this. They said they were discussing sexual education of the children, and the parents were very, very upset that they were sexualizing children and all. So it's a movement. It's a societal shift. Okay, it depends on the side of the wall which you are, side of the fence. If you're on the pro side, they say, oh, we're letting children know their awareness. You know, a man could be trapped in the body of a woman. A woman could be trapped in the body of a man. You have a right to express yourself. You have a right to discover yourself. They even do gender assignment from, it's available now from a very young age. And I read somewhere where, you know, the young boy wanted to become a girl, and then later on he said, oh, I'm tired of being a girl, I want to go back to being a boy. Yeah. The argument is that these are kids and they're not old enough to form an opinion and know who they really are. That's one side of the divide. And then you have the other side, especially from parents who feel, hey, don't discuss this with my children and all. So that there will definitely be clashes. And as I said, there's a societal change and movement going on around the world. You know that the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, where women are given, Roe versus Wade gave women rights over their bodies. If you get pregnant accidentally or you were raped or something, you could go for an abortion. And all that right has been taken away by the United States Supreme Court. So, you know, there are intersections. And
they have people who were campaigning on it saying that, don't worry, we'll bring it back and all.
So that's it. There's a lot of tension going on around the world. The world, as you knew it 20 years ago, is not the same anymore. So things are changing rapidly, especially with the last president of the United States, who ensured that he put more conservative judges on the United States Supreme Court. So you find that the country is trying to shift to its conservative background and regulate more of these things. So the world is changing swiftly.
All right, so now I'd like you to help us understand the difference between bestiality and LGBTQ, because I read somewhere on social media where someone said that she's been married for over a year, and at some point the husband stopped touching her, and only for her to go outside and find out that her husband was sleeping with their goat, the female goat. And she said she's been treating infections and all of that. And I read so many comments. Some came out to say that, oh, that's cultism. He has to be in one cult or the other. And then some people said, that's just bestiality. So what's the difference between
them? I don't think it, I don't think it has anything to do with being a cult member. It maybe if the members of the cults, if the doctrines of these cults gives you injunctions, or says that you have to go and sleep with animals to be a member of our cult, maybe in that way. But bestiality simply means it's a sexual habit that is abnormal. Well, people indulge in sexual relationships with animals, and it's against the law in Nigeria. It's against the law in a lot of jurisdictions, and that's it. Sexual intercourse or sexual relations should happen between humans, human to human, and animal to animal, and it shouldn't be.
No other way.
Yeah, it's very. Our laws does not allow for it, and you know. Right. I know we debated this a lot in university during our philosophy classes and looking at ethics and, you know, what is normal and what is not. It's an abnormal behavior. So plainly that's just it. May I add that it is illegal in Nigeria to engage in any form of sexual activity with animals.
It just reminded me of when we were growing up, that particular actress that had something to do with a dog, and then they said
Glamour Girls.
They said it was just a movie.
Talking about Glamour Girls, which made a lot of waves
at the time,
94, 95, thereabouts. Yeah.
All right.
I guess it was a narrative of, you know, what happens in society. We might try to pretend that it doesn't occur or shy away from it, but it does occur, and then all these films are narratives of what it's on the underground.
All right, so before we leave talks about same-sex marriage and LGBTQ, I'd like you to reiterate. We're in Nigeria. Now that you are in Nigeria, I understand the fact that a lot of people have their own sexual orientation. You might be bisexual at some point, or you might be straight, and then some moments you just wake up and say, okay, no, I think I want to go the other way around. So now that you are in Nigeria, not somewhere else, what exactly is the right words you should tell to people? Because I see, I think I saw Bobrisky even warn people, say, you're in Nigeria, why are you doing it? And then some other person come and say, you're in Nigeria, why are you doing it? So from the legal side, now that you know that you're in Nigeria, what applies?
No, it's
Let's
the law.
say it again.
The same sex Prohibition Act is very real. You know, anybody who runs foul of that law will face the music.
And the music is 14 years imprisonment.
It is. That's the punishment. If you go to Saudi Arabia, it might even be death, because it's Islamic law that they would use over there. So if you go to hardcore Muslim countries, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Somalia, you dare not. So, but as I said, Nigeria is a sovereign nation. That's what the law says. It's a different ball game when you're in the international arena, or you're trying to invoke the international human rights law provisions.
So now there's this argument before now. People say that probably we might just have one person that would just say it has been banned all along, and since after all you all want some form of grant or aid from this global south, probably you have one person who will come out and tell you that, okay, because we're looking for some kind of handout, it means he or she might decide to say, okay, I think we should look again into that law and then put some touches into it. Do you see that happening?
You mean to amend
that same-sex law?
The laws are always open to amendments.
So it's possible to have another president who will say, okay, no, I think we should look into it again.
If you can get through Parliament. Because Parliament is still going to be the drafters of the legislation, and they're going to be the ones who will vote on it. So if the law can sail through Parliament, the Parliament is supposed to be the voice of the people, of the country. So,
and then when the voice of the people say we want it, and then the Parliament agrees to it, that settles it?
That will be it. It will mean that we have also had a societal shift in Nigeria. Now, maybe attitudes of people are changing. Nigeria is not an island. We're connected with other countries, and we're highly mobile people. We're always traveling. Okay. Recently, one of the leaders of a prominent political party came out to say that his son was, homosexual, and they're praying for him and everything. We're interconnected, and we're always traveling. We're influenced by what happens in the West, and the West is also influenced by what happens there. Look at Afrobeats music is taken all over the world, So it is possible that people become more tolerant. As the years go by, I have people who say, yeah, you can be whatever you want to be, you can be whoever you want to be. So far, you stay on your lane and I stay on my lane. That's tolerance. That's some people's views and ideas are changing with globalization. And you also have the hardcore who would never listen. They don't want to have anything to do with it. Even if you're a family member or a child, you will be disowned, and the family will not want to have anything to do with you. So it's a societal thing. Where Nigerian society and values were in 1980 is not where we are now. So it's a changing thing.
All right, so we're due for a break. So when we go on that break and come back, we'll discuss other matters, especially with regards to the just concluded NBA AGC. I'll see you later. Join us again.
We give it to a contractor, like what happened the last time. They gave a contractor a sample. Say, this is what you should give us, and the contractor sent the first batches. But because he now saw an opportunity to make more money, and then the standards dipped.
Oh, wow.
So you had two qualities of bags, and the NBA had to reject one, and that created a fiasco. Some lawyers did not get their conference bags on time, and mayhem burst at the NBA conference, with lawyers breaking the barricades and trying to get through to the store and get their bags. So this is the background of.
And there's some people who say that lawyers don't do this kind of things.
Well, lawyers are human beings as well, and especially if you're frustrated. I mean, these conferences are not cheap, and even as they're not cheap, they're heavily subsidized. We pay as much as 100,000, 90,000 for this conference.
For the conference,
depending on your year of call.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So senior advocates pay more, judges pay more.
Okay.
And then
young
it comes,
lawyers.
young lawyers, you pay a paltry sum just for you to be able to
Encourage
find your
them.
feet and get you here. So that is the background of these conference materials. The NBA is not an island. It's part of this country. And what you've seen happening at the NBA is a reflection of the society. We have also had people who have gone into politics for wrong reasons to enrich them. Look, I saw a list recently of student union presidents. Did you see the number of aides he had? Special assistant at student union level. Student union presidents are now printing business cards and appointing chief security officers. What's going on? It's a reflection of the society. It's a reflection of what they see happening at the state level and the national level. And unfortunately, the NBA is not immune to this. We ought to be trendsetters, and we ought to be the one setting the pace.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on the first and the second part of the show, but we'll go straight to our last leg of the conversation, and we're talking NBA this time. Our guest is still Kola Alapinni, international human rights lawyer. Now, let's leave same-sex marriage and come back and talk about things that concerns your profession, the NBA, with the just concluded conference you had. First, let's start with how far so far, how did it go, before we start talking about some of the issues that came up at some point.
I think this is one of the best organized conferences in
Oh,
recent
okay.
times. Oh,
Really?
Yes. Oh, yes. We've usually had issues with. Let me tell you something very interesting about lawyers and the NBA conference. The conference park and the bag, which the NBA gives you, is a coveted trophy by every lawyer.
Interesting, really?
It is a coveted trophy by everybody.
Oh, okay.
So this is proof that you came to the conference, and you can see lawyers carrying it around with pride and everything. So sadly, the success of most conferences is determined by if you got your pack on time or not, because some people don't get it, and they have the NBA national has to send it to their home branches and everything. Okay. So once in a while, we've had conferences where everything ran smoothly. We even got tabs.
Oh wow!
Yes.
What else are the contents of?
Well, it's usually, like I said, we had tabs a couple of years ago, and it will have your brochure for the program. They have a pen, sometimes the rules of professional conduct, etc., etc. And then of course it's either a knapsack, and this year they had a wheelie bag, like a pilot case. So, but these things are not manufactured in Nigeria, especially bags. Usually you get them from China, and they're manufactured in volume. And the Chinese are not Father Christmases. You have to pay first before it gets there. And a lot of these conference things are gotten from the bar professional fees which you've paid, which may not be easily remitted on time to China for you to get this batch. Or you could give it to a contractor, like what happened the last time. They gave a contractor a sample. Say, this is what you should give us, and the contractor sent the first batches. But because he now saw an opportunity to make more money, and then the standards dipped. Oh, wow. So you had two qualities of bags, and the NBA had to reject one, and that created a fiasco. Some lawyers did not get their conference bags on time, and mayhem burst at the NBA conference, with lawyers breaking the barricades and trying to get through to the store and get their bags. So this is the background of.
And then some people say that lawyers don't do this kind of things.
Well, lawyers are human beings as well, and especially if you're frustrated. I mean, these conferences are not cheap, and even as they're not cheap, they're heavily subsidized. We pay as much as 100,000, 90,000 for this conference.
For the conference,
depending on your year of call.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So senior advocates pay more, judges pay more.
Okay.
And then
young lawyers.
young lawyers, you pay a paltry sum just for you to be able to
Encourage
find
them.
your feet and get you here. So that is the background of this conference materials. It's a 1 week of everything for lawyers. It's a jamboree. It's an opportunity for you to see your colleagues that you've not seen. It's like an annual pilgrimage. It's like you're going going on pilgrimage, and some people you saw last year may not be alive anymore, and so you guys meet, you're thankful, you go to the parties, and if you have an election year coming up, next year is going to be an election year, so you have all the candidates who will be selling there, so there will be parties and parties and parties, and of course, don't take away from the conference itself. The opening is usually declared by the president or the vice president of the Federal Republic, and then you have and where the president uses it as an opportunity to state a mission or make a statement. You famously recall that Muhammadu Buhari used the one in 2015 or so to say that national security would trump human rights, and there was a lot of uproar, and it kept his word. The human rights went down the drain in favor of national security. And so whatever the president or the vice president says at the opening of an NBA statement or NBA conference is taken very seriously, because he knows he's talking to a group of learned people who occupy a very strong part of the Nigerian profession. Yes. So it's not to be toyed with. And then you have the various breakout sessions and etc. after the main opening. So the opening is on Sunday, and then on Monday you have the conference declared the main address. And after the main address, you break into the various breakout sessions, so where everything you can possibly think of is discussed. It's a very rich symposium.
All right, so even as we try to manage our time, I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. Now, one is with regards to what the story we saw flying around on social media with regards to the NBA president, the rift between the NBA president and the treasurer, which she made some statements, and then he came back to make some other statements. I was watching it, and then someone beside me said, why would the NBA president really say all of that stuff? And then another person said, why would the treasurer come out? Why are they actually watching their lenience outside? And then I said, okay, don't worry, we'll bring a lawyer to come and help us diffuse out all that. So now that's one on the side. What exactly happened and how has it been settled? And then secondly, I hear you talk about next year you should be expecting a new president and another election. And because I know it's 2 years. So are we going to be seeing the same people that left after the other election that happened? I know they had Gazama SAN, you had some other person. So would you see those people again in the ballot, or this time it has to change, just like you have in the Nigerian elections? Okay, so as I was telling you earlier, in my view and in the view of many other people, this is one of the best organized conferences. I mentioned the issue of the conference bag as one of the benchmarks. So this year, which Afamo Sigwe was the chairman of the TCCP, the bags came earlier. They came like 3 months before the conference. Yes, okay. Which means that there was an improvement. The payments were sorted out. They had a very large venue, the Velodrome at the National Stadium, which could take everybody. It was a huge space and all. So we were not scrambling with spaces or cramped whatever. So we give them a pass mark in that. Okay. As regards washing the dirty linen of the NBA outside, that was unfortunate. It was poorly managed. It shouldn't have gotten to that level. But in recent times, we've had scandals in the NBA regarding finances. So you've had some administrations who ran the NBA, and there was
almost nothing left in the till, and you've had a new president comes in who is going to hold the purse tightly, pays his way to the International Bar Association conferences, pays his way. If he uses a private jet, he pays his way, etc. Because some of the presidents are.
Is he supposed to pay his way there?
But that's what they're saying, that working for the NBA is a service.
Oh,
You're not a career politician. You don't come into the NBA for the NBA to be paying your way in so many stuff. You should want to give back. You know, it's like a pro bono service. You put yourself up for service, and you know, the expenses should be reasonable. So even SAN has done very well for himself and can afford a private jet, and it doesn't want to fly under normal circumstances. Doesn't even fly commercial. So why should he be flying commercial when he becomes the NBA president if he can afford it? Okay, some of these senior colleagues are stupendously rich and they can afford it. So they feel like, why should my lifestyle deepen because I'm leading the NBA? I'll use my money. Okay, so there are people like that. There's going to be a clash with people who want to come into the NBA and see it as a means of self-enrichment. And they want to fly to international conferences on the till of the NBA. I mean, look at the price of the dollar or the pound now. So there would always be clashes. Okay, or someone who feels that if the NBA president is comfortable to be flying private jets and everything, why should the NBA not pay for theirs? So it's not a very easy one-size-fits-all thing to handle, but I think the NBA has its own internal mechanism to deal with it. The treasurer said our side of the story, and it was only logical for the NBA president to be allowed to respond to that side of the story. Whether he should have been at the annual general meeting is a different thing completely. So more work needs to be done. Okay. Also, we need to look at the quality of candidates who are coming into the NBA elective posts. The NBA is not an island. It's part of this country. And what you've seen happening at the NBA is a reflection of the society. We have also had people who have gone into politics for wrong reasons to enrich. Look, I saw a list recently of student union president. Did you see the number of aides he had? Special assistant at student union level. Student union presidents are now printing business cards and appointing chief security officers. What's going on? It's a reflection of the society. It's a reflection of what they see happening at the state level and the national level. And unfortunately, the NBA is not immune to this. We ought to be trendsetters, and we ought to be the one setting the pace. But you can see this meltdown that you saw is a reflection. You've seen it with various political parties removing their chairman, removing their this, and they're going to court, injunctions flying all over. We've seen it before at the NBA in 1992, where the NBA went into comatose for about a decade or so before we were able to find that feedback. The military, subtly planted agents in the NBA, and a fracas broke out at the conference in Port Harcourt, and the NBA could not operate at the national level for almost a decade. We were only operating at the state level. So because it's a very important pressure group, what the NBA president says and what the NBA says is taken very seriously by the society. You can tell by the way the society is responding to what they heard, and it's as if NBA has been in the news for the last 1 week or more. Exactly. So people would always say, you guys are learned, you should know better. What's going on?
Exactly what I heard
we listen to you, and I'm sure that the internal regulatory mechanism of the NBA will be triggered, and the elders would try to sort out this issue.
That's a very fine place to leave the conversation. Thank you so much, Kola Alapinni, International Human Rights Lawyer. Always a pleasure having this talk with you.
Same. Thanks for having me.
All right, viewers, that's where we draw the curtain on this segment or this edition of the show. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much to all of my crew. It's been a wonderful time having this conversation with you all. I will see you next time. My name is Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours, and God bless Nigeria.